The first asylum seekers in the UK 1 week ago moved into the floating shelter Bibby Stockholm, moored in Portland Harbour on England's south coast. The pontoon is intended to house up to 500 asylum seekers whose application for residence is already being processed. They are not interned in this dwelling. Nevertheless, the three-storey container pontoon is also intended to serve as a political deterrent and to deter new migrants who cross illegally from France to Great Britain in inflatable boats from crossing and doing this. Under recently tightened legislation, these migrants are now generally barred from applying for asylum unless they can claim to have been victims of human trafficking. As several media reported, the first men arrived at the port of the southern English city of Portland 1 week ago. And there, several people protested against the anchorage of the ship called Bibby Stockholm, others against the Conservative government's asylum policy. In addition, the British government is trying to increase the deterrent effect with further measures. Immigration Secretary Robert Jenrick has announced that penalties for employers who employ undocumented migrants will be tripled to up to £60,000 per case. Jenrick argued that this would make the employment of illegal refugees prohibitively more expensive. And landlords who offer accommodation to illegal migrants will also be subject to higher fines in the future. They are said to have to pay up to £10,000 per case and double that in repeat cases. As we all know, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak wants to deter migrants with drastic laws. Anyone who enters the country without permission is arrested, is to be deported as soon as possible, and may no longer apply for asylum in Great Britain, regardless of personal circumstances. The number of people who entered the country irregularly rose to 45,000 last year, although Conservative forces had announced that Brexit would reduce migration. However, since then, there has been no readmission agreement with the EU, and there will not be one. After all, 500 men between the ages of 18 and 65 are said to be waiting for the outcome of their asylum procedure and will be housed on the Bibby Stockholm. With this measure, Sunak wants to solve a space problem when accommodating migrants and avoid high costs from hotel rooms. And the government plans to deploy more of those barges. It seems that this government will do everything it can to make asylum seekers feel unwelcome and unsafe in this country. That was said by Steve Valdez-Simmons of the human rights organization Amnesty International. He warned of a re-traumatization of refugees who have escaped war and displacement. There should be great concern about confining each person to living quarters the typical size of a car park, as Valdez-Simmons said. The Refugee Aid Care for Calais announced that objections from lawyers had prevented several asylum seekers from having to board it. The Bibby Stockholm was last used as a floating accommodation for oil workers. In the mid-1990s, it also accommodated asylum seekers and homeless people in Hamburg. At that time, it was just designed for about 200 people. But as the BBC reported, the capacity has now been increased to 500 with the help of bunk beds. And the Fire Brigade Union therefore warned of risks. But as a deterrent, the British government wants to significantly increase everything. And I mentioned the fines for landlords, and undeclared work and illegal rentals are major attractions for people who mostly cross the English Channel in small boats. At least the Home Office says so. The responsible Secretary of State, I named earlier, Robert Jenrick, accused unscrupulous company bosses who allowed undocumented work to drive the business of people smugglers. And according to the plans, companies will be fined a lot more now, 45,000, 60,000, and the landlord fines are now tenfold. The Conservative government wants to deter migrants with these drastic laws, and anyone who enters the country without permission is immediately arrested, as I said, and deported to Rwanda if they could do this, but there are a lot of court cases going on. And you might have seen my video this week already on the volcanic island they have in their eyes now. I don't know. This is so much populist policy going on there that I'm sometimes really lacking the words of explaining what I really think about this. But nevertheless, I will keep you informed. And if you want to know more about British politics right now or about Brexit, the next video is here in the end screen. I hope you had a look at the banner up there, and I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.